This will be chapter 15 of the 51-Day War, Ruin and Resistance in Gaza. Its title is Dodging Death, and attached to the chapter beginning is a photo of children playing in Gaza City's port the day after the victory parades. So you can see that. And continuing. On August 28th, the day after the victory parades, the gunfire in the sky, the stentorian speeches, the ululations, and the celebrations, uniformed policemen were back in the busy street of central Gaza directing traffic. The seaport was full of families again, with children frolicking in the shallow shores of the rock outcroppings that encircled the inlet. Further south, where the flow of raw sewage from Gaza's shattered sanitation system was less extreme, the beaches were full. I spent an afternoon wandering around the Gaza City port and making small talk with some of the locals enjoying the sultry day. As I watched a fishing crew load nets for the evening's catch, I fell into conversation with a 20-year-old man from Shujaiya whose right arm was in a cast. Broad-shouldered and with an athletic bearing, he told me that he had lost a contract to play professional soccer in Jordan when Israeli shrapnel shattered his arm. His home was destroyed along with his entire neighborhood. He was among the untold number of athletes in Gaza who lost their careers and even their lives, like Ahed Zakou, killed in his sleep by an Israeli attack on his apartment. Zakou was among 2 active coaches killed during the onslaught of as many as 20 athletes. Quote, "We are already dead," the young footballer said, staring off at the bustling port. Later that day, Dan Cohen and I were joined at our apartment on the port by Jesse Rosenfeld, a journalist from Toronto, a longtime friend who had covered the most gruesome stage of the war, during the ground invasion, when scorched bodies were literally piling up in the streets. Jesse was one of the first Western journalists to report on the summary executions that took place in Quzaa in the home of Hani al-Najjar. Now, he was back to investigate the circumstances of the killings and search for the identities of the victims. He brought with him the borrowed laptop he relied on throughout the war after his computer broke, an old MacBook with a shattered screen that could only display documents in the bottom left corner. A few days later, on August 30th, Jesse, Dan, and I were among the only international journalists in attendance at a ceremony in central Gaza that honored the 16 local reporters killed by the Israeli military during the war. By the time we learned about the ceremony and arrived at the downtown office, at the downtown office lot, where the most modest event took place, we found the journalists' family members filtering out with small bouquets of flowers in hand while a group of local correspondents assembled in a triumphant pose. These reporters had been closer to the fire than most outsiders. Many of them were targeted in their homes and offices and produced some of the most bracing coverage of the war as a result. Unlike those of us who came from abroad, the Israeli military did not seem to view local correspondents as journalists deserving of any special protection. They were simply Palestinians who could be eliminated like anyone else, and whose deaths did little to generate international outcry or profuse exhibitions of solidarity. During the military escalations in Gaza in November 2012, when Israel targeted reporters working for the Hamas-run Al-Aqsa TV for assassination, the Israeli army spokesperson unit declared that any reporter in the vicinity of Hamas positions was a potential target. During the 51-Day War of 2014, Israeli forces targeted and destroyed Al-Aqsa TV offices in Gaza City. On most nights in the week after the war, we found ourselves unwinding at an apartment on the top floor of Zafir 1 residential tower that had belonged to Jihad Saftawi, a wiry 24-year-old writer and researcher with deep-set eyes and a confidence that belied his age. Jihad had committed himself to bringing the war to an international audience from a ground level, real-time view through an online live stream he operated. Saftawi's father, a former Islamic Jihad leader who ultimately quit the group, was still in jail after his imprisonment 14 years ago by the Israeli government in violation of the Oslo Accords, which were supposed to have provided him with amnesty from prosecution. Jihad's wife, Lara Abu Ramadan, was an artist who hoped to dedicate herself to painting and jewelry making. Unable to find an adequate supply of beads and art materials to pursue her craft under the Israeli-Egyptian siege, she scrapped by as a journalist and translator. Every month, Abu Ramadan hosted a party for her girlfriends, who showed up in stylish, tight-fitting dresses and danced in the salon while Saftawi and his friends hung out in the kitchen. It was the closest thing to the night of clubbing in the Gaza City Strip had to offer. Sorry, my reading is a little off today. I'm a bit tired. This next photo is Jihad Saftawi and Abu Ramadan on their balcony in Zafir 1. And the photo was taken by Dan Cohen. During the last few days of war, Dan and I had subsisted on falafel and the occasional kebab sandwich and the cornflakes we bought from the local corner store. But now that Gaza's fleet of rickety fishing boats were back in the water after 51 days of inactivity, we found ourselves seated around Saftawi's kitchen table before an Alexandrian-style fish meal. We were joined at the table by Jihad's older brother, Hamza, and Mohammed Soliman, a researcher for the Al-Mazan Center for Human Rights, who at the age of 24 held a master's degree in human rights from the London School of Economics. Unlike the rest of us who had showed up in shorts or dusty jeans and sat around shirtless in sweltering heat, the bespectacled Mohammed always appeared in business attire, with a striped shirt tucked into neatly pressed khaki pants. Having spent the last 2 months producing daily reports for Al-Mazan on the casualties across Gaza and literally dodging airstrikes on his way to work, I assumed Mohammed would want to discuss something other than death and destruction, but the war seemed to be the only topic on his mind. As he polished off the last pieces of fish, he reflected on the killing of a co-worker. Quote, Anwar Saanin. He made the coffee at Al-Mazan, and in the end, when he lost his confidence, he lost his life, Mohammed recalled. Quote, when the war started, Zahin left his home in Beit Hanun and stayed at our offices at Al-Mazan. It was supposedly safe, where he could stay with his family from day one of the war to the end, because of how fearful he was. After the first 3-day truce, he decided to go back to Beit Hanun just to get his motorcycle because he wanted to move it. He didn't drive it because it was dangerous. He just walked it carefully through the streets. And then he saw a group of municipality workers, and he was going there to talk to them about an issue about his house when a bomb just directly hit him. Quote, it was another day at Mazan working on our press release, and all of a sudden the news comes. Anwar Saanin was just targeted in Beit Hanun. Anwar Saanin. I couldn't believe it, Mohammed said. As shocked as he was by his co-worker's killing, it was the normalization of death that disturbed him the most. Quote, everyone was just carrying on with their work as if there's no news. I was the only one. Everyone was just working and carrying on. Afterwards, I realized that they were just so unprepared to receive this news that they just ignored it. End quote. Jihad experienced a similarly unsettling feeling when he received a call from the Israeli military ordering him and his neighbors to evacuate their homes in Zafir 1. Quote, I grabbed all the most important documents and all the new clothes in my apartment, he recalled. I went out to go to my family's house, but 10 minutes later, they were completely destroyed a tower next to ours that was 12 floors high, and this didn't even shock me because I was waiting for them to hit my building. I was too busy thinking of getting the important papers out and the passports. End quote. Outside Jihad's window lay the ruins of Zafir 4, and beside it, a row of tents erected by its former residents. Quote, we were living in a maze of death, said Mohammed. Quote, you just need to walk carefully for 51 days. It was raining death in Gaza. Like huge bombs, man. It's raining bombs, and you're just dodging death. This is how we survived. Quote, it's all about confidence, Jihad emphasized. The people who lost their confidence, they just got killed. End quote. Leaning against the counter and gnawing on a piece of leftover fish, Jihad's older brother, Hamza, wondered how the trauma of war would affect him. Quote, you feel in the war like you're all alone on earth, he said. No one cares what happened to you. You have to just take care of yourself and hope you make it through the day. You become afraid to face the day. You become afraid to find out one of your friends is dead. And that's what will make you go completely psycho. End quote. Quote, in the first two wars, they didn't hit us here, right in the center of the city, Hamza continued, with his wide eyes and a look of astonishment across his face. Every time death gets closer and closer. We need to enjoy ourselves, to be happy, to just go on, because in the next war, they could kill us all. End quote. After a long minute of silence, Mohammed piped up, quote, in 3 months' time, no one will be talking about what happened in Gaza, so we'll move on. We'll move on. We don't care about death. We know death. End quote. That was chapter 15. So we're going to turn this off, come right back, and do chapter 16.